So, welcome everyone. I'm Pete Erickson, the founder of Modev, and we are hosting today's webinar. This is actually a follow-on to an activation we started late last year with Karsun. They participated in our AI House at CES, which was a fabulous event, and started to learn a lot about Karsun solutions and what it is they're working on. You know, code modernization has been something that has been talked about a lot, especially since the COBOL days. But now things are evolving in a really interesting way, and now not only, is code modernization a critical component to, any enterprise, with AI tools, we can now start to leverage that code in new and powerful ways. And that's what today really is all about. I'm very pleased with the co-panelists we have for today's webinar, the founder of Karsun, Kartik Macheri. Thank you, sir, for joining us. And Peter
Yeah.
Thielsen from AWS is going to be joining us as well. And I'm going to have each of these gentlemen quickly introduce themselves, and then we'll get this show going. So, Kartik, I'll turn it over to you for a quick introduction.
Thanks, Pete. I appreciate it. And I'm very happy to be here today with yourself and with Peter Tilson. My name is Kartik Mecheri. I'm the co-founder of Karsun Solutions. We have recently launched our product called ReDuX. The website is goredux.ai. And we will be discussing a lot about how ReDuX solves this modernization issue, along with AWS's Transform. And I look forward to this discussion and a very active participation from the participants today.
Thank you, Kartik. Peter.
Oh yeah, sure. Hey folks, everybody. Hey, it's good to meet you. So I'm Peter Tilson. I'm a senior tech leader at AWS. I've been in technology for close to 26 years now. However, I spent 18 years of those 26 in software development and software development adjacent roles. So I've been through a couple of those migration and modernization plays in my past. I'm currently heading an organization of solutions architects here in the US. These were folks that look after a large cohort of partners, AWS partners, and help them to to engage with their own customers on a technical level. My team does extensively engage in modernization and migration activity, right? And I'm very happy to have worked closely with Kartik and his team. Karsun is up to something really, really interesting. And I'm very much looking forward to having this conversation today, right? Because there's lots to learn and a lot to discuss.
Thank you, Peter, so much. Really appreciate it. All right.
Sure.
Well, Kartik, go ahead and we're going to pull up. You're going to start. We're going to pull up your presentation. And while he's doing that, we're actually going to push out our first poll question. So I'm going to ask Jess Harder on my team, who's behind the scenes, to push out the first poll question. And that is, how is your organization prioritizing investment in AI? So this is an opportunity just to kind of let us know, where are the highest priorities for you? Investing in infrastructure to become AI ready, experimenting and prototyping to identify AI capabilities, modernizing current systems to include AI features, building new applications with AI features, a mix of new and old AI developments. A lot of choices there, but this is going to let us know, where you're really spending your time. That would be great. So if everybody could take the poll, that really helps a lot. And we'll give this poll a couple minutes, and then we'll push out the results. And again, this really helps us guide the conversation. So thanks for just taking a moment to take that poll. And Kartik, I can see your presentation, which is
Great.
great.
Thanks, Pete.
Oh, look at this. We got some results here. Very balanced. Right now, the most being the mix of new and old development, but very balanced audience. It's great. Kartik, I think maybe can you maybe go to full screen? It looks like it's a reduced image there.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. And
It's good.
there you go. Perfect. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Excellent. Thanks for taking the poll. We'll summarize the results here in a moment, but I'll let Kartik get his presentation started. Thank you so much, Kartik. Take it away.
All right.
I'm gonna
Thanks,
go
Pete.
off. Yep.
Thanks a lot. And as I mentioned earlier, Karsun has created this AI platform called ReDuX. And today I would like to just describe at the highest level what ReDuX is, how we are entering this modernization market using ReDuX as our AI-powered modernization platform, and how this will benefit customers as we go through this process. Um, as uh, as you know, let's start first of all from where we are today. If you look at it, AI is moving from pilots and prototypes to really into an enterprise implementation, and it is pretty rapid, as you can see. In fact, according to Gartner, 40% of enterprise applications will integrate with task-specific AI agents by the end of this year. So, but there's a problem, right? Because there's 70% of legacy IT software written in the Fortune 500 companies was written over 20 years ago. At the same time, 81% of execs believe technical debt constraints really constrains and the forward motion and AI success. So we needed to transition those decades-old legacy systems and address this technical debt to meet the demand for AI-enabled enterprise applications. As it turns out, AI is the solution to this problem, and evolving AI capabilities really empower enterprises to build the bridge between the old systems and the new systems. Today, AI can be used not only for improved coding, but also to understand what's in the black box legacy systems, identify relationships between the legacy systems and the external systems, map data flows between these systems, and also, understand the user's intent. What is the real use of those systems that exist? You can really automate and accelerate some of these key modernization initiatives that you have planned within your organization. You can also, on top of it, generate AI in the agent skills through self-learning for accelerating these process improvements and so forth. And obviously, this is just scratching the surface. There's a lot more you could do with AI today, and every day there's something new that you could definitely do using AI. So that's why if you look at why the AI augmented mainframe modernization market is beginning to accelerate. In fact, for just mainframe systems alone, a market's a market study anticipates more than 13 billion market by 2030. That's a huge market for mainframe modernization, right? So both our ReDuX platform and the AWS platform and the Transform platform are part of this market. And today, we'd like to share with you how we are tackling this particular challenge of mainframe modernization. So here is how ReDuX works. So this is the platform I earlier mentioned, built at Karsun, it's our IP, working very closely with AWS. We are a co-innovation partner for AWS Transform that was announced during AWS reInvent. And we are also part of the ISG quadrant for a challenger of this, in this market for mainframe modernization. And how does ReDuX work? So I just want a quick high level, we ingest the information your team would use on a day-to-day basis for discovery, like source code, user guides, system demos, and what have you. All that is ingested into ReDuX. Then step two, we use AI to build out a system blueprint. And this is essentially creating a knowledge graph of your entire legacy system. And during this step, you may use a series of blueprint lenses to better understand your system, how they behave, and also the behavior of its users. So essentially, you can zoom in into APIs, database schemas, and even source code, and extract, chat with the code, to chat with your legacy system, and ask questions like, what are the business rules? What is this database connecting to? Or even, uh, uh, ask questions about APIs and their connectivities and endpoints and so forth. So that becomes a digital twin of your legacy system. And as you know, the biggest problem with these old mainframe systems is the subject matter expertise. So with the blueprinting, you really are reducing that risk of subject matter expertise leaving the companies, leaving your organizations, and you are lost without knowing what's inside that black box in the mainframe. So essentially, this creates a digital twin of the legacy system where you can ask questions, you can look at what the details about the legacy systems and get full insights about it. And then once you do that, now step three, you extract only, obviously what you need, plan for your migration. You can make it incremental at the bite size that you can really chew. And then the organization can come up with a solid roadmap, mobilize the ReDuX AI agents to really accelerate your team's tasks. So there are a set of autonomous agents that you could develop as part of this, that could act as a digital twin for your team members and help them with the acceleration of the code generation aspects of it. And then finally, generating code, you can generate automated pipelines and perform all the quality tests through these autonomous agents, and we call them ReDuX modernization agents. So that's at our highest level how ReDuX works, how we take legacy code, how we extract the business logic, how we enable the subject matter expertise within the blueprint so that you can ask questions, you can come up with a modernization roadmap that adheres to your organization, you can generate code using the blueprint, the ReDuX modernization agents. And you can there's always, as you can see in this diagram, there is always human in the loop. You can perfect either your development code base, or you perfect your business logic, or perfect your architecture through this. And creating so that's at the highest level what ReDuX does.
Kartik, thank you so much. What a well thought through solution, and I really love how you include the human in the loop element to this. And I definitely we'll dive into that in a little bit. What I want to make sure that everybody on the webinar is welcome to ask questions. This is an opportunity to ask anything you'd like. Use the Q&A button at the bottom if you would. That way we can answer the question live, or maybe there's a follow-up. Looks like River Shores Management asked, are there any statistics on how much this speeds up modernization? Cardiff, do you want to address that real quick, and then we're going to tee up Peter as our next presenter.
Yeah, this particular slide shows you that. I was about to finish up with this slide, but here is what it is. We are looking at 50% reduction in team sizes. Immediate results of a 22 5% to 25%, somewhere around that area for improved productivity compared to manual modernization efforts. The key part here is the next two, that like the 2x improvement in the quality of code, because the round trips are reduced based on the ability for these agents to generate the code at the pace and the quality that is needed. And obviously, the delivery times is going up almost 4x compared to the traditional delivery times. Did I answer that question?
Yes. I tell you what, and it's not the first time I've gotten in and stopped somebody from the payoff slide, but it's kind of funny. And I give River Shores credit for asking the question and putting the ball on the tee, which you just hit off. So thank you for that. And River Shores, let us know if that answers your question. Do you have any more slides after this one, Kartik?
No, this was pretty much it, and I just wanted to wrap up with that and hand over to you, back to you, so that Peter can talk. And I just want one quick thing, right? The when we do this modernization, it is important that we have this kind of toolkit within the enterprise, because there's always agile teams. The tools should be supporting the agile teams, but not just the individual productivity. So we are looking at this being an enterprise grade platform, and that's why serious modernization work, right, needs something like end-to-end solutions like this, ReDuX, or AWS Transform. And with that, I'll hand it back to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, Peter, we're going to get you kicked off. Go ahead and, Cardiff, you can stop sharing. Peter's going to start sharing, and we're going to switch over to his presentation. So thank you so much. And again, I want to encourage everybody, use the Q&A button. If whatever questions come to mind, this is an opportunity to put them down, and we'll get them answered. So Peter, off to you.
Sure. First off, quick check if you can see my presentation shared. Feels like you do.
Yes, I can see it.
Yep. Okay, excellent. Perfect. So yeah, thank you. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Kartik, for walking us through the problem landscape and the opportunity at hand. I think it's indisputable that there is a lot that needs to be worked on. What I will do is I'll step out a little bit, zoom out a little bit from that conversation point of referring to Karsun's solution only into what AWS is offering, and walk you guys through the storyline that we're seeing and how integration of solutions such as Karsun's ReDuX look and where they are placed. Starting at the beginning, and I'm not going to repeat a lot of what Kartik has been saying, but there's certainly that opportunity we're all seeing. We like to say there's 220 billion lines of code in production today when it comes to mainframe applications. I'll say this as somebody who spent so many years in software engineering. Yeah, COBOL is very verbose and it eats up a lot of real estate. So 220 billion may not directly mean that there is as much business logic encoded in this. It could have been done a lot less. Nonetheless, there's a lot to it. We see the 70% of all enterprises, all enterprise applications running on mainframe. This is something that AWS has been seeing for a long time. And not only this, 80% of all of world's corporate data, to some extent, resides on or originates from mainframes, and that is indeed something that is a big bulk of work for many of us. In addition, and I think this is also indisputable, is that as somebody seen a lot of mainframe applications, and I'm sure you in the audience here, you've seen also many, and are probably working on a few. It's hard to be agile, right? When you're kind of confined to the mainframe world, it's hard to innovate. And so there's a compounding pressure point to do something about this. But it's been very hard over time. And we've learned this, and we know this who are deeply engaged and involved in this. And again, kind of tying it back to my own experience, and I make this slide a bit more generic because this is not, and it should not be only about mainframe modernization or mainframe application modernization per se, right? The application modernization spiel in general, moving away from something legacy or old into something new, has always been complicated, right? It's always required a lot of, like, call this high touch of manual work. Mind this, you try to grasp the meaning behind 20 million lines of code, right? It is very, very difficult for a human being. And we talk about mainframes, we talk about additional aspects beyond COBOL, right? Talk, obviously JCL, we talk VSEPs, we talk and so the data structure and DB2s and all of that. So there's a lot to understand. And so the cost and the risk involved and the time involved in driving modernization has always been a very, very complicated matter, right? We all know, and I'm sure everybody will agree, that there's a pressure point, there's a push factor, which is, and Kartik made that comment earlier as well. People are departing, and they're taking away the application knowledge and their intelligence, if you will, right? The technology debt is compounding. There's more and more that innovation is asking for, and there's more and more stuff being added, and that makes the big ball of mud become even larger. So there's a pressure point. There's need to do something. We've all understood that in order to do something about this, or in terms of doing something about this, we all understand that we all are at an inflection point, right, when it comes to technology. Kartik talked about this. We all know what's going on here. AI and Gen AI is, so it seems at least, I mean, it's not a solution for sure, at least not where it stands today, but it is definitely an accelerator to to improving the situation and to tackling those challenges that I discussed earlier. Now, what I want to convey here is that as of today, and I'm sure many of you have been tinkering with various types of coding companions, you could choose any of those, take Codex or Copilot or Cloud Code or any other, and you could already today accelerate your experience in assessing the code base, right, and extracting business rules and business logic from the code base. This would all work without the utilization of any solutions or services such as the ones I'll be talking about, or such as the one that Kartik talked. However, if you were to do this, you're not going to get anything that is purpose-built. And I think this is what makes the difference, and that's the secret sauce behind ReDuX, but also the secret sauce behind AWS Transform for mainframe. So as in terms of introduction, for those who do not know or have no familiarity with this, AWS Transform for mainframe is a purpose-built mainframe modernization service, a dedicated experience with its own UX that has been exclusively launched to accompany the experience from starting from an assessment space or step up until the very end of the line, if you will, which is the actual code transformation or refactoring, and then even deployment. This is all rooted in our own experience of many, many years. It's been launched in 2025, but obviously we've gathered a lot of experience over time, and we've acquired various companies to help us with that very job of driving even deeper into mainframe modernization. Blue Edge is one of them. We've been accumulating 15 years of experience in modernizing COBOL application and converting them to Java, right? So they're with us, and so we really see a massive acceleration to the time invested into such modernization place. We like to say, we've saved millions of hours of developers. There's a number, just 748 developer years saved so far. Obviously, this is hyperbole at some extent. I'm very careful here, given my background as a software engineer. Not everything is that easy or as easy as it sounds. However, there's a bunch of examples or organizations have already utilized Transform as a helper to drive those modernizations, right? So take the New York Times, for instance, doing this, or Toyota, or even as recently BMW announcing that they have done work with AWS Transform to push for that. So a massive accelerator, if you will, to resolve complexity. I'm not going to dive too much into detail on this slide, but I really wanted to sort of surface the experience that AWS Transform is bringing. It is, as I said, it's a dedicated platform with its own interface. It has its own chatbot-like experience where you do have an orchestrated journey. However, and I think this is a point I got to bring home, which is one can experience the journey, but it can step out at any time. And I think Kartik made the same comment. The human in the loop aspect is something that goes throughout the chain of experience or execution, right? So whilst you can follow a stream of actions, you can also step out and take advantage of whatever has been generated along the way, right? So Transform brings a lot of kind of pre-built components to it. It uses sub agents, a swarm of agents to handle a lot of the work of the assessment and the generation piece and so on and so forth. And as I said, human in the loop is a central matter to the overall story. Now, what I'll do is I'll give a deeper dive into the individual building blocks, but I find those to be pretty interesting to look at. And I caution folks, and I like to describe myself as a realist and pessimist sometimes, but I just want to say, as we talk about things such as the assessment ability of tools like this, right? We're not at the end of the story. There's just so much more to be done. And so as you look at what AWS Transfer brings to the table, we can say, well, yes, it brings a vast ability to analyze the code base, for instance, right? It can go through COBOL programs, the instance copybooks that goes into JCL, Kix and whatever. So you would even understand and extract business logic from Kix implementations. However, it doesn't cover the full story, right? And this is where, so the full story being things such as, let's say, network topology, right? We can bring it on. We're not assessing this yet at that time, right? Or things like SLA documents. These are all important things to run a proper assessment of the application, right? And we all know this, right? Because as we look beyond the code, there's so much more that encodes, no pun intended, the business logic, right? And so there's a lot more to do. And this is where partners such as Karsun come to play that help to expand and extend the ability of such platform like AWS Transform, right? To bring those kind of specific skill sets to enlarge and expand on whatever intelligence is being extracted. Now, back to the stream, you see the assessment step comes first. We don't only do code analysis, data analysis. So I talked about this, DB2 obviously being looked at in vSEM files. I mean, for those who've looked at vSEM files, right, and try to convert those, it's always been a very, very complicated matter, right? It uses a different encoding, right? And AppSync is different than Unicode. So there's a lot of complication there. This is being taken care of today. And the last thing I want to call out briefly is the activity analysis, right? Because I really find it fascinating to talk about the fact that there's so much dead code in our applications today, right? Especially in those that are 20, 30, 40, even 50 years old. My experience is that we're kind of looking between, is it 17 to even up to 40% of the applications that we have assessed so far have raised or have surfaced those large amounts. Sorry, 17 to 40% of those applications have had dead code. Okay, so activity analysis is something. So SMF files, for instance, would be the ones to bring on and help with the analysis to extract and identify those dead lines of code. Now, documentation is the next step, right? Or document generation, rather, I should say, because this is the product, right, of the assessment. And I find that to be interesting to discuss because, in the end of the day, if you get a human readable as well as machine readable kind of dependency graph representation of the situation, you could stop, as I said, and can say, take it back, bring on your subject matter experts that are still knowledgeable of the application and your systems, and then work with them to enrich and add on to what the documents are and what they represent in terms of business extraction, and help to construct that final representation of what really matters business-wise and what maybe does not matter anymore, right? And so that in itself is already very powerful. Now, as you continue the journey, and this is still within the flow of AWS Transform, now comes the next step, which is once we know how the system operates and what it does business-wise, how do we break those big balls of mud, right? How do we break those big problems into a lot of small problems? And this is where code decomposition comes into place, right? And again, partners such as Karsun and others are really helping with this, are very powerful in identifying bounded contexts and where kind of loose coupling may be found, where kind of high cohesion may be found in this big ball of mud that I mentioned a bunch of times. This is something that is absolutely critical and crucial to drive migration wave planning, right? Because you can break it out, you can say, I'm going to go with those small steps and maybe not cause too much trouble, right? As I am probably we'll be going for a big bang modernization, right? So breaking out into small problems is the next step. And then what follows is another decision that needs to be made, right? As to, will I refactor? So essentially keep the business logic as is and just convert COBOL into Java, let's say, or do I want to reimagine the entire experience, right? So I do want to modify, add on to the business logic that we found, and really re-implement the entire application in a new way, in a modern fashion, if you will, right? And then eventually you do testing, and then as AWS Transform is deeply engaged, involved in the ecosystem of AWS, you could almost semi-automatically / automatically deploy your new application into the AWS service landscape, right? So that's on the detail side of how things work. And I touched base briefly on the refactor versus reimagine. I think this is also pretty interesting to be informed on because, again, there are those two paths, right? You can think of refactoring as I said, as a translation of languages. Sometimes, and more, there are cases where it really makes sense. It is really important to retain business logic, right? And not tamper with it too much because there might be a restrictive situation where you've got you pass compliance review, you're compliant, PCI DSS or whatever the compliance law could be, FedRAMP, that would really that would have been a long effort to get done, and now you don't really want to get out of this, you want to break out of this, right? So you would translate this into the code into Java, for instance, and we really keep things within the context. So that's one path to take. The other path, as I said, is going to the reimagination piece. And I think this is where you're really kind of going beyond a simple conversion conversation or transformation conversation, right? This is really into going to step into utilizing specifications-driven development, right? Because now, as you have extracted business logic, you can say, well, why don't I convert this business logic into specifications for my application? Why don't I derive from those specifications non-functional requirements, right, for my application, and really kind of start building out from the, if you will, kind of from the inverse perspective, not as we used to be by starting with code, but much more by starting with the user story, right, and the intent of what the application should do, and then eventually utilize coding companions such as Kiro, which is AWS offer on the market to do these exact things, such as Windsurf would do, or Cloak Code and others, right? So there's those two paths that one could go. Now, I said it a couple times that AWS Transform is a very powerful service, but it doesn't cover for all the edge cases that are out there in the world, right? And I called out Karsun a bunch of times, but the reason why there's Karsun and the reason why there's other partners that are collaborating with us is that we really see the necessity for specialized skill set and knowledge brought forward and inspired by various industry specifics, right? So think of healthcare or the fintech base. There's a lot of stuff that happens in those industries that is very proprietary and that requires this kind of specific deeper dive analysis and inspection and introspection that AWS Transform is not built for from the get-go because it's meant to be a generically utilizable solution. Now, with the so-called composability feature, we can bring on those partner solutions such as Karsun and others, right, to help us complete and close those gaps in Transform stability. So that I think to be a very powerful move, and we're working very closely with Karsun and getting them on and introduced there for anybody as a customer to use. And the last thing I'm going to let you go with before I'm going to let you go is the getting started steps, if you will, right? Because as I said, Transform gives the platform, and Karsun and others would go into the domain depth. And I'd like to invite all of you to experience how Transform works. And I haven't said this, but Transform is for free, right? There's no costs incurred for your testing, for your playing with it. And so I really, really warmly would invite everyone here on the call to get into experiencing this, trying a demo, reading up on what it does and what it does not. Because I'll say this, we really, really welcome anybody's feedback. 90% of our roadmaps, our service team roadmaps are already inspired by customer feedback, right? So the more we can back in return, the better we can make our product to meet your needs and your demand and close the gaps. Peter, that's what I had from my perspective. And yeah, opening up for questions.
Amazing stuff. And I think it's such an important conversation for, for especially for those that have that own the code bases or they're trying to re-architect things. I mean, now is the time to modernize, definitely. Well thought through, gentlemen, both of you. I think that you can see how this partnership now has a lot of strength between AWS and Carson. And I definitely want to encourage the folks that are on this webinar, if you have any questions, definitely use that Q&A button. And we can also do, we're here, we've got Peter and Kartik with us, and so we can do those questions live. We're also going to push out the remaining poll questions, so let's do that. And then I have some questions for Peter and Kartik, and we can keep the conversation going here. So the next poll question is, what is the top challenge you face when transforming legacy enterprise systems into modern applications? So, and if you're not quite there yet, what challenges do you think you're going to have? That's maybe a good way to answer this question as well. Shrinking workforce or missing subject matter experts, poor documentation, technical debt, siloed data, or other modernization risks. So I think we can all relate to this in many ways. So please weigh in on this poll, and then we're going to keep this conversation going. We'll let it run here for a couple minutes. Some of these are a tough choice. Okay, so I'm gonna, oh, thank you so much to the folks that took the poll. Shrinking workforce, missing subject matter experts. I tell you what, and this is a related conversation to this, and that is workforce transformation.
Yeah.
And I think it's a big, big topic. And it gives me a cue for maybe some questions I'm going to have here. For the folks that answered that question, shrinking workforce or missing subject, is it, would love for you, you can weigh in on the chat bar, but is it that the people that wrote that code are no longer around, or they're not at the companies anymore? They wrote this code a long time ago. Or is it that the companies that you work for are, maybe they're right now. I feel like there's a hesitation in hiring because of AI in many ways, right? So maybe the people are hesitant to make some hires they would have hired before. But that they're looking for a specific kind of expertise. So if anyone has thoughts on that, definitely weigh in. But I'm going to go back to a couple things. One, Peter, in your presentation, there was a slide there that talked about the lines of code. It was billions of lines of code of COBOL. And my question to you is, Cobalt is like the number one, I'd say it's like the number one thing people talk about when there's legacy systems and legacy
Right.
mainframes, right? But then there's a lot of other code, Java, C Sharp, C++, that's sitting inside these. What other language, what would you say is the number two language that is part of the legacy code um, base out there? And that's for both of you.
Huh. Well, first thing comes to mind is assembler,
Oh,
jokingly saying, obviously. Well, what we're seeing is that folks have tried and attempted modernization, right? And as things evolved over time, mind that this conversation has been ongoing for many, many years. So we look back maybe 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whenever something new came up, right, that would be asking for innovation, folks really try to find paths into other languages. And so Java is definitely something that comes up quite often there in the kind of in that perspective of, hey, we've kind of tried to do something new, newer-ish, right? Aside from the COBOL space.
yeah, Kartik, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah. So, but I think in lines with what Peter just mentioned is that, see, we have seen COBOL, assembler, natural language, which is also part of mainframe. It's popular within certain insurance and banking communities. Visual Basic, fourth generation languages like those. We've used ReDuX to migrate and modernize those languages as well. And this is a real problem because these systems are built over decades. And when people leave after all of the experiences and all the knowledge that they've put into these systems, it's a real struggle to extract that information. And that's exactly where ReDuX plays the role. We have lenses, that's what I was mentioning in my presentation, where you could really chat with the code. The blueprint, ReDuX blueprint, becomes the subject matter expert or the domain expert for the legacy that you're trying to modernize. So this hits the real nerve for organizations where you're losing subject matter expertise. You don't know what's in the black box COBOL code, or any other legacy. We have looked at Java, .NET, any legacy code, um, and we are able to create this blueprint that you can really do some analysis with your legacy and see how best to reduce tech debt or reduce, move to modern software, or even just for your understanding, what's in there. You could use ReDuX to do that. So wide variety of languages. It's all supported as part of ReDuX, and that's the power. I'm saying that's the reason why we see the reduction in completing these modernization efforts. It's because we are eliminating pretty much a full layer of the deep down business analysis, if you may, that would be necessary if you didn't have something like a ReDuX.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate that. My next question is, you had a slide there that showed some humans in the loop in in the architecture of the Karsun solution, and this question is also for both of you. What are the roles that you see are managing this kind of transformation, these kind of like code modernization? So I'd love for both of you. Karsun, you're sort of a last mile producer. AWS is talking about, mainframe, modernizations, but what are the roles specifically within that? And are you seeing a change or a transformation of the types of people that are involved in managing a code transformation process?
Uh, I I can go first, Kartik.
Yes,
Oh, sure,
please.
sure. Go ahead,
Okay,
Peter.
all right.
That's good.
So I think one has to split this into two separate dimensions, right? One dimension being what is the workforce that one has to work with today as one drives that modernization exercise, right? Because this is the workforce that has been involved and engaged in running and maintaining those old and older applications for quite some time, and they have accumulated that knowledge base, right? So it's extremely it's imperative, right, to have direct access to anybody that has had any interaction with those applications, be it from a project management, product ownership, up until the actual developer, right? And we talk networking, we talk security, so there's just a wide variety of individuals that are crucial to driving success. The other dimension, and I think this is where the conversation takes place today, also is, hey, the folks that we used to work with, those COBOL developers who may not really need them anymore in the future as we convert into other languages, right? We certainly will need conceptual understanding of those folks, and we certainly will need, like application and business understanding, but the role morphs into something newer and different. Now, what is different and new? I mean, we could talk about 2 days, which is, today is 50 years after those applications. Today's state of the art is different than tomorrow's state of the art, and we all know and see that conversation take place as well, and that conversion and morphing, right? So, Peter, if you're asking for today, then we talk about what we've been doing, of course, maybe over the last 10, 15 years, right? And it's nothing really different or crazy. When we talk about tomorrow, I'll say this, if I may place this briefly, because obviously this is on top of everybody's mind as well, is these are decision owners, right? Folks that are able to manage, because mind this, and I've learned something super interesting recently. You can outsource knowledge, but you cannot outsource judgment or decision making that easily, right? Or you cannot outsource understanding is the very verbatim statement here, right? So you have to have a community of folks that understand where the direction is headed with the application at hand, right? So it's a different, again, it's a change in the it's a further evolutionary step, if you will, in what we've been doing for so many years now.
I totally agree, Peter. But I think the long story short, what I'm thinking is more of decision makers. like the architects, the telling the system what to do. So again, we have this concept of skill packaging for AI agents, essentially building that skills and knowledge that Peter was talking about. You can codify that so that the agents can continue to use that knowledge that you have today and start building those systems appropriately. And I'm thinking like decision makers and validators, like you don't need, I mean, if you use something like the Transform or the ReDuX platform, you need more requirements validators than requirements generators. You know what I'm saying? The requirements
Yes.
developers. So it's
Yeah.
things like that. So it's evolving as we speak. So the decision makers like architects, product owners, or product managers would become more important than just plain old developers. And we will need developers, but to develop agents that can perform the work using the skill packages that are being developed as you progress through the modernization cycle. These are the things that are accelerating, Pete. These are the things that are accelerating your modernization effort. These kinds of agents, these kinds of skill packages, and it's absolutely critical to have the right kind of governance so that somebody is looking at it, human in the loop, like the decision maker saying, yes, this looks good, let's move forward with this. Interacting with the agents that are coming up with these outputs, making sure it goes through the gates.
I saw a title the other day of AI validator, and I had not seen that title before, but it's
What's
kind of
that?
an interesting a role called the AI validator role.
Yes. Yes.
Really interesting. Like I had not seen that role. It's kind of like it's an evolution of the old QA person, right? So you have a QA person and they're QAing a
Totally.
product, right? This isn't fully that. So it's kind of like an offshoot of the QA
Yeah.
team, which is
Yeah.
interesting. I don't know if either of you have any reaction to that, but I
Uh,
saw that role and I thought, okay,
yeah,
that's new. I haven't seen that before.
I will say the reaction is in general sense, and I think it ties well into that stream of steps that I've described as I talked about AWS Transform, where you do have um, elements of generation, right, where documents are created or representation is brought forward, where you do need those individuals that bring that judgment. And so be it that there is a dedicated role or be it that there is a dedicated responsibility. I think I would rather anchor this in that dedicated responsibility, right, of individuals that can make that judgment, that can make and drive that decision to push forward. By the way, if I may plant this, I think this is a fascinating conversation because I think, and I've been dealing with this question for quite some time, which is who is qualified to do this, right? And if we look at the facts, those are qualified that have had the experience in their own past and understand what it takes to build an application, understand what it requires to kind of look at all those specifics and the periphery around the application. And as we like to say at Amazon, there's no compression algorithm for experience. So you have to have had this experience to become a qualified judge. Now, as I'm planting this conversation at him right now, I say there's been a lot of back and forth of, junior developers, senior developers, do we need them? And back to my comment around outsourcing knowledge, it, there is a path that is very blurry today as to if you bring on or if you do not bring on anybody new, how do we get those people that are knowledgeable, right, and have been around for a long time and that can handle the kind of tasks of today where judgment matters, right? If they've never had a chance to learn and make that path that all those old school folks like myself and then Kartik and you, Peter, have come through, right? Because we've come through the, let's call it analog world, so the world prior or before generative AI, right? So I think it's a fascinating conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Workforce
I think,
transformation is huge. And Kartik, as a founder of an organization, I mean, you're experiencing this firsthand, right? Because
yeah.
you're hiring for a fast-growing AI platform company, right?
Yeah.
How, what's the landscape look like out there from a talent perspective? Do you think people are getting themselves in a position where they're really ready to help lead this transformation, or what are you seeing from a talent perspective?
I think so. I think people are now adapting more faster than anticipated during the AI's hype cycle. But the thing is, what I'm the way we are kind of creating a culture to say everybody should behave like they have a team of digital agents. So they're team leads for a digital workforce. So they need to start using these agents and the digital workforce to perform their day-to-day stuff, and they be the decision makers that we spoke about earlier in the previous question. They will be the decision makers, they will be the knowledge holders to ensure that these agents and these digital twins are performing the work that they to the level of satisfaction that each one of these individuals would want. We are not there yet, but
Right.
that is the kind of mindset that we are bringing into into our culture, into our hiring, and into our entire organization.
I think one big takeaway for me about today is that, we started the conversation about code modernization and we ended up talking about workforce transformation. And I think they go hand in hand, right? Because it's like it's cultural, it's workforce. And I certainly know for us and the events that we're doing this year, we're off to London in a few weeks for our next version of AI House at the AI Summit. Workforce transformation is probably going to be probably one of the most popular
Yeah.
panels.
Yes.
So it's interesting, you sort of probably didn't plan on this at the outset when you built this product, Kartik, but now you really are sort of like on the front lines of workforce
Yeah,
transformation and
because
people
it
doing
really
well.
hits. Yeah, it really
Yeah.
hits you, right? As you're building the product, as you're going through this journey, suddenly you see that, hey, this is really reducing this kind of skill, but we need the other kind of skill to enhance our forward progression. So it's quite intriguing. It's very exciting times for sure, and we are glad that we are in the middle of this huge transformation that's going on within the AI world.
Well, you've done a great job getting the platform to where it is today. It's certainly ready to modernize code, but it's also ready to help you modernize your workforce, which is great.
Yeah.
Peter and Kartik, thank you so much. I would love to have just turn over the floor. Any parting thoughts about today and where folks can find you? And again, we are recording this. We'll get this out to all registrants and to our attendees today, certainly. But parting words for today, and Kartik, we'll start with you.
No, first of all, I want to thank all the attendees today, and we appreciate your time. And we hope you learned something about our products. So the ReDuX website is, I think Pete already posted that. It's goredux.ai. And you can reach out to us through that website on how to start engaging with us on how to start using the product and so forth. And I want to thank Peter Tilson also about with the being here today. It was great, and I want to thank Amazon for the great partnership over the years. So.
Thank you, Kartik. Peter, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Right back at you, Kartik, first and foremost. Thanks for this collaboration. I will say these are transformational times. And again, as somebody who's been mentioning my career path in my past multiple times, I think never ever before has development and evolution been as fast as it is today, right? And it is fascinating. It is also scary to a certain extent, and I think everybody is in the same boat here. Some of us sit more in the front, some of us sit more in the back, but we're all in the same boat. We're all subject to the exact same matter. And so, having had this conversation today is a conversation I could have had about anything and everything out there that pertains to the old world, right, that we're getting out of, because it is a tectonic shift. It's a paradigm shift, it's a change in thinking and off thinking, right? And so, I am consistently fascinated, and there's more that I'm talking about. And Peter, you're welcome you to talk about other topics with me because I'm a fan of agentic memory, right? So, you guys can find me in agentic memory somewhere in the abyss of the internet because I think this is the next step to look into, not the next step, something that's ongoing for a long time, right? To drive further approximation of AGI. Folks, it's an amazing time, right? Where we are. And I think we all should be happy that we're there where we are right now.
Right. Right. We'd rather be at the forefront of this change instead of at the whim of it because, yeah, times are changing. But this has been a fabulous conversation, and I'm so happy to know that there are forward-thinking entrepreneurs building solutions for this transformational period, and people inside some of the largest tech organizations like Peter who are supporting this transformation as well. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. Really appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time today. Thank you to everybody who tuned in today. And again, we'll be getting this post-produced, and there'll be a follow-up going out. But thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye. Thanks, Pete.
Yep. Cheers.